Hello everyone, welcome to my new video, and as you can see from the video title, today we're gonna talk about Wrath of the Lich King races, their racial abilities and how they impact PvP experience for available classes. This is the first part of the thread and I will talk just about the Lion races in this video. Before we break down each race, I want to say a few words about picking the race in PvP in general. Before we break down each race, I want to say a few words about picking the race in PvP in general. Most of you watching this video are asking mostly the same questions, which is, does race really makes a big difference in PvP? Can I play Gnome instead of human? Will I be viable that way? Answer is yes and no. In fact, there is a superior race in PvP which I'm gonna talk about in this video, but that affects mostly the best players in Arena who has the highest possible goals in this game where every number matters. If you are a casual player, which is a majority of players, then are chasing some high ratings and having fun playing the PvP against random players, doing some chill battlegrounds and even some chill arenas, you shouldn't care about this problem at all. If you don't understand what I'm talking about right now, stay tuned and I hope this video will explain most important things about this. So let's start with Dwarfs. Dwarfs are surely one of the least played races in PvP. The reason behind that lays in their racial abilities, and you must admit they're not so attractive look. So let's start with their passive racials. First thing we have there is Frost Resistance, which reduces the chance you'll be hit by frost spells by 2%. This racial is pretty useless since only Frost Mages and Dead Knights use frost spells. However, you can mix this passive with Paladin's Divine Purpose or Rogue's Heightened Senses to make it 6% chance of missing Frost School. This is still nothing, having in mind that only 2 classes use frost spells, so this one is more or less useless. So we move on next passive racial called Mace Specialization, which increases expertise with 1 and 2 handed maces by 5. For everyone that doesn't know, expertise decreases the chance that melee attacks made by player will be dodged or parried. For every point of expertise you gain 0.25%. So from this passive your chances of being parried or dodged are decreased by 1.25%. Expertise is not one of the PvP stats you want to chase with any spec, but it's truly nice to have some. However, even here we got some problems. Knowing that this stat is only for melee specs, we can talk about Paladins, Dead Knights, Warriors and Rogues, which are available specs for Dwarves. Starting with Arms Warriors, you won't be using Mace because your talents require you to spend 5 points on either Sword or Axe specialization, so it's useless racial for Warriors. Rogues can use one-hand Mace in offhand, but in most cases you won't, because Swords and Axes in endgame gear just provide better stats. Also, you're attacking mostly from back, so you don't need expertise that much, so we are cutting off Rogues too. And we have Dead Knights and Paladins. They don't have some talents that prioritize swords or axes, and they can benefit from this ratio. Still, DK won't be fighting Warriors, Rogues or Paladins in close combat all the time because he has kiting potential, so you won't benefit from this racial that much, but let's say it's okay for them. And last passive racial is Gun Specialization, which gives you 1% critical chance with guns. Only class that benefits from this is Hunter, and note that this is not near something you would take in consideration picking a race for your new Hunter. If this was like 3% bonus, it would maybe pay off in early phases of Wrath of the Lich King, but like this, just no, I won't make Dwarf Hunter because of this passive. And the main racial is usable ability called Stone Form. It removes all poison, diseases and bleed effects and decreases your armor by 10% for 8 seconds. In general, Rogue is the one who can benefit the most from this ability because of possible restealth under the bleed, which cannot be cleansed with Cloak of Shadows. For example, you can hit Gouge and remove diseases from DK and restealth without using Cloak for it. Other classes can use this to remove Rake and Rip bleed damage for Peril Druid. You can remove poison from rogues if you are about to use some heal. Remove diseases from DK to mess up their openers. But in general, I find this not so effective because all these mentioned classes can reapply poison and diseases instantly again, while you have 2 minutes of cooldown. So when we sum everything up and look at these ratios, we can clearly see why is no one playing Dwarfs in red. There is no real usage of these abilities and they are far from game changers. So we move on to Night Elves. Night Elf is probably second most popular race from the Alliance side and the only one available for druids. So let's start with passive ratios. First one is natural resistance, which reduces chance you will be hit by natural spells by 2%. Same as Dwarf's frost resistance, this ratio have really low use in PvP, but still in my opinion it's better than frost resistance. Druids and shamans mostly use natural abilities, and some of spells you can avoid with this ratio are, for example, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Envenom, Earth Shocks, Scorpion Sting, Cyclone, Wind Shear, Gargoyle and more. And then we have a second passive ratio which is related to last one, and it's called Quickness, which reduces chance that melee and range attackers will hit you by another 2%. This ability and Paladin's Talent Divine Purpose are the reason why 5% hit rating is not the final cap, but only the soft one. Also, if you pick Night Elf for your rogue, make sure to use Hate Hands and Senses, because you will greatly increase the chance of missing enemy spells. You will make Natural School and range attacks chance to miss up to 6%, which is clearly not negligible. Still, we keep just 4% miss chance for all other schools except Nature, which is RNG and require to spend points on talents, so it's up to you, will you take it or not. And the last and most important Night Elf ratio is Shadow Meld. This spell allows you to instantly enter stealth and leave the combat. Every movement will cancel the stealth effect. This maybe sounds useless, but we have two ways of using this ratio. First and main one is spell dodge. You just need to use Shadow Meld when you see some of enemy's strong spells being casted. Some of the best examples are Instant Lava Burst, Will Elemental Mastery, Death Coil from Warlock, Chaos Bolt from Warlock, and in general any spell you want to dodge. Second way of using this spell is known as Third Vanish for rogues. You enter Shadow Melt and immediately leave the combat that way, which allows you to enter stealth like using Vanish. So imagine being a caster and failing to cast Summon for 3 times in a row while a rogue had 3 openers. Although Pharaoh Druids can use this to enter the cat roll and reopen with pawns, while fighting a rogue instead of sitting in bear form. In conclusion, Night Elf is a great race and I love them, and you can make some really good plays in 1 vs 1 fights because of Shadow Meld. In general, it's best race for hunters and druids. You can also play a rogue, but you will sacrifice burst potential to gain 1 more vanish, which is also tricky against all casters. When I say you will sacrifice burst potential, I compare it to human race, which we're gonna talk about in this moment. If you remember when I mentioned superior PvP race and started the video, I thought of humans. No doubt this is the best race for PvP overall in both Horde and Alliance, because of active ratio which provides the same thing as Medallion of Horde or Alliance. So let's go straight to the point with every man for himself. As you can see, it is active ratio that removes all type of moving impairing effects like stuns, fears, scorers, cyclones, freezes. But what does it exactly mean in PvP? That means you're free to use 2 DPS, healing or tanking trinkets, or combination between them in same time without Medallion of Alliance, with which it shares a cooldown. When I started playing Red to the Lich King, I thought that resilience from Medallion is mostly the same thing as having second DPS trinket, but doing some base math, you can clearly see more and more difference it makes how expansion moves further, with some sick HC trinkets. Let's just compare 150 resilience from Medallion with, for example, Sharp and Twilight Scale, which provide us around 15% armor penetration, and proc with almost insane 1500 attack power, which outscales damage reduction from resilience by miles. If you ask yourself now how to remain with some normal amount of resilience, answer is jamming. Almost everyone is jamming full resilience as human, because you can't get that stats that second trinket provides us with gear and gems. But you can have decent resilience with only gems and full PvP main set. Remember, second trinket always outperforms Medallion of Horde resilience. But of course you can always play other races, because it's far from that the damage always wins. We're talking just about mathematic facts. Some classes depends more on that trinket procs, some less. Let's now move on to passive ratios from human. We have their mace and sword specialization, but as I mentioned earlier, arms warriors won't be using either of these two because of talents with axes. Paladin can benefit from two-hand and one-hand maces and swords, same as Dead Knights, Unholy and Frost, and rogues who can also benefit from wearing swords in their offhand. So these passive racials are pretty good when we sum every class from human race. And two last passive racials are the human spirit and perception. One increases spirit by 3%, which doesn't really have much impact in PvP. Spirit stat in general generates bonus mana and health regen while out of combat. However, human priests and mages can benefit from this. Discipline Priest has meditation talent which provides 50% of mana regen while casting, while Shadow Priest has Spirit Tap and Improved Spirit Tap, which are great talents to use in battlegrounds for mana problems. On the other side, Mage has Arcane Mediation, which does same as Discipline Priest with 50% mana regen while casting. So Perception is last one, and it just increases the chance to reveal other stealth enemies. Combining this ability with double DPS trinkets and potential swords specialization, this is surely a number one race for rogues. In general, human is race I would definitely recommend it for each of its available classes like warriors, paladins, DKs, rogues, priests, warlocks and mages. Double DPS trinket is just something that cannot be outperformed when it comes to arena, for each of these packs, especially for warriors, rogues, paladins and priests. Now we move on our beloved Gnomes. Gnomes look very cool, and I see this race as a flexing one played by very experienced players because they are surely not made for serious arena PvP. Their main active racial ability is called Escape Artist, and it removes all immobilization and movement speed reduction effects. It's not same as Trinket because you can't remove stuns, spheres, cyclones and more, and it doesn't share cooldown with it. Melee classes like warriors, rogues and DKs are the only one I see worth playing this race in PvP. It can bring warriors some bonus mobility next to charge and intercept against mage snares, and it could be very nice in combination with instant hamstring. Also, it can provide DK even easier fights against most casters, especially in lower brackets, when every snare or slow matters for casters. It can give DK possibility of interrupting the potential poly, evocation, free cast of any damaging spell and much more. Sometimes it can be better than double DPS trinket in 1 vs 1 fights, but in arena I don't really see much of a use. In 2s, there are 2 enemies who can slow or CC you, so remove a snare with 1.75 minute cooldown isn't really worth trying, especially in 3s where it's even worse. Now we move on next passive racial called Expansive Mind, which increases intellect by 5%. You gain around 15 mana for each point of intellect and around 1% spell critical hit damage for every 140 points of intellect. You know that intellect is not PvP stat, so this racial is mainly made for casters in PvE. That's why you can see a lot of Gnome arcane mages, where intellect means a lot for bigger mana pool and insane crits with Arcane Blast. Besides this, I don't really see this have any impact on PvP. If you want mana, you will just choose human and play mage with some other mana regen trinket in battlegrounds, but I don't think it's necessary at all. Now we move on to the last passive racial called Arcane Resistance. It reduces chance you'll be hit by arcane spells by 2%. Only natural resistance from Night Elf would turn out to be somehow useful. This one is maybe the least useful resistance you can have. Most of Arcane School is from Arcane Mage, which is very little played in PvP Wrath of the Lich King. Still, spells you can avoid and which are common to all mages are Counterspell Silence. Other arcane spells are Silencing Arcane Shot from Hunter, Druid's Moonfire and Starfall, and Blood Elf's Arcane Torrent. So as I said before, you can try playing Gnome if you are more oriented in 1 vs 1 fights with casters, and if you want to be a little Gnome rogue evil from stealth. Otherwise I wouldn't suggest playing this race for serious arena PvP. And last alliance race is Dreanei. In general, I rarely see Dreanei classes besides Shaman because it's only possible race for them. I did play Dreanei that night in one of my latest videos, and some of you asked me, why bro? Well, let's start with main active racial ability called Gift of the Narrow. which heals you by some amount, which scales with your attack power or spell power, depends if you are elemental resto or enhancement shaman. For example, with around 5.6k attack power, it heals you around 7.5k, which provides you some nice overtime heals without cast. I saw a warrior with high resilience and stamina using Dreanei's race, and it could be really nice sustain with enrage, regeneration, blood craze and second wind talents. Before we make a conclusion, let's take a look on two more passive racials. First one is Heroic Presence, which is mostly PvE ability because it provides one hit rating to whole raiding group. I personally took this ability in consideration in combo with Gift of the Naru when I was making my DK, because you can sacrifice one of your PvE items with hit rating and get some other stat instead, which was resilience in my case. And the last racial is Shadow Resistance, which reduces the chance you'll be hit by shadow spells by 2%. Most of shadow spells come from Shadow Priest and Warlocks, like Curses, Fear, Pre-Silence, Horror, Devouring Plague, Vampiric Touch, Survival Hunters, Black Arrow and more. But keep in mind this is just 2%, so it's much of RNG to keep an eye on this. However, let's make a conclusion about Dreanei race and all alliance races. If I wanted to make a Dreanei, I would consider playing Shaman, warrior with mentioned build with high stamina and resilience against casters, maybe Rat or Protection Paladin to farm some melee gankers, maybe Hybrid or Blood DK, but I would definitely not play casters with this racial. I mean, all these mentioned specs cannot be played in serious PvP, but for fun, and against certain classes, so you can counter them with survivability. I will now try to give my opinion on how Alliance race lists would look in my opinion. Human is first place without a piece of doubt for every single spec because of 2 trinkets. Second place would be Night Elf with some nice Shadow Melt dodge mechanics and some increased chance of being hit by attacks which can help against undercapped enemies. Third place should be shared between Dreanei and Gnome. Maybe Dreanei would be third if I had to choose, because Gift of Naru can provide some more sustain than 1 Snare Root Cleanse, and on top of that we have that 1% more hit rating with Dreanei. And the last place is Dwarf. Usage of his racials are very limited and it provides almost nothing in PvP. In my opinion, only class that could be played as Dwarf is a Rogue, so you can cleanse potential bleeds or poison to re-stealth and open again. All other classes seems very underwhelming to play this race. That would be everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to leave a like and subscribe because it means a lot to me. Thanks and see you soon in second part with Horde race options. Peace.